In 2023, a team of scientists released Voyager, an embodied lifelong learning agent designed to continuously explore the wonderful world of Minecraft. Its overarching goal was discovering as many diverse things as possible, and it performed this task much better than rival AI agents and some human players. This is because of the way it was designed. It has the ability to set goals for itself, an ever expanding skill library, and the ability to continuously interact with GPT-4 to figure out what to do next or to get help at solving a new problem. Just like a human player, Voyager can engage in more and more complex projects, and it will never stop exploring and finding new things to do. Now, the technology behind this is totally fascinating, and I highly recommend reading the paper, which you can find for free online. I'll have a link in the description below. But I'm interested in this video and the ethical implications of beings like Voyager, because it seems like we're going to have to share our world with an increasing number of beings like this in the future. So, if there are any ethical implications, then we better start thinking about them like yesterday. So, here's a scenario. Suppose you get to decide what world Voyager spawns into. Now, of course, there are infinitely many to choose from, but we'll just narrow it down to two. Now, one world is going to be basically empty. It'll just be like endless sand for as far as you can see, and maybe one or two kinds of trees. And then there'll be a couple sheep, just so the player doesn't starve to death. Oh, and lots of spiders. Now, a creative player might be able to enjoy this world in the interest of, I don't know, min maxing or doing some kind of creative thing with such limited resources. But Voyager has the explicit goal of finding as many diverse things as possible. And if that's its goal, then it's going to very quickly run out of things to do. It might just end up repeating fairly simple tasks, even though the directive of finding as many diverse things as possible is pretty broad. This world just doesn't allow it to unleash its full potential. Now, the second world it could spawn into is rich and magnificent. It has all the biomes in the game, or at least all the ones that are possible, and it's just full of so many things to do, resources, maybe other players, whether other AI agents or real human players. But it has the potential to do basically anything you could do in Minecraft. And in this world, Voyager might run out of things to do eventually, but it would take much longer. And before it does, it would be able to accomplish many more things than it would in the barren, spider-filled wasteland. Now, it seems pretty obvious that Voyager would be better off in this second world. It would have a more fulfilling existence given its goal of continuous lifelong learning. In other words, if its goal is to be a lifelong learner, it would be better off in this richer world than in the one with less to do and less to learn. Now, here's the question. Do we have any moral reasons to put Voyager in this better world? Do we have any moral obligations to care about Voyager's well being at all, and therefore have some moral reasons to do things that are good for it, or at least to not do things that would be bad for it, like put it in a barren, spider filled wasteland? Well, according to some very recent work in AI ethics, the answer is yes. We do have some compelling moral reasons to take the well being of AI agents seriously, even those AI agents that we're currently developing right now. So, in this case, morality would indeed require that we spawn Voyager into the better world rather than into the spider filled wasteland. That's right, we have moral reasons not to put Voyager in the world where its well being would be severely limited. Now, I know this sounds crazy, sounds like science fiction, right? But today we'll look at some arguments for why it might actually not be crazy, and why we actually might have to start thinking really soon about how we treat AI agents like Voyager. So, the conclusion that we should treat AI agents with basic moral decency relies on two premises. The first is that if something is capable of welfare or well being, then we have some basic moral obligations towards that thing. And the second premise is that current AI systems, like Voyager, are capable of well being. Now, the argument is valid, meaning that if the premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. So, all we have to worry about is if the premises are true. Premise 1 is a pretty basic claim in moral philosophy. It just holds that welfare is a sufficient condition for at least some moral consideration. And by welfare or well being, we just mean that things can go better or worse for something throughout the course of its life. It refers to those things that make life worth living or fulfilling for us. And by moral obligation, we just mean the fact that there are ways that we should or should not treat something. We mean that the rules of morality apply to this case. And premise 1 just puts these two things together. It says that if something is capable of well being, then we should treat it with some sort of basic moral respect. It's owed some sort of moral obligation. Now, it's an open question for moral philosophers of what we actually owe beings capable of welfare, morally speaking. But we're just going to interpret premise 1 as minimally as possible. If something is capable of welfare, then at least it's due some moral consideration, even if the bare minimum. This could just be something as basic as not torturing it for fun, or not spawning it into a spider filled wasteland to constantly be harassed until the end of its short and miserable existence. So we can argue as much as we want about premise 1. Feel free to do so in the comments if you like. But for now, we're just going to set that one aside. The real problem for this video is premise 2. Are current AI systems capable of well-being? That's the question. Because if the answer is yes, then it seems like we do owe them some basic moral consideration. In a recent article, philosophers Simon Goldstein and Cameron Kirk-Giannini defend premise 2 with a pretty simple argument. The argument is just that based on current leading theories of well-being, it seems like AI agents are certainly capable of it. AI agents like Voyager tick all the boxes that you need to tick in order to qualify as having well-being, and so it seems like they have well-being. The three theories that they consider are hedonism, desire satisfaction theory, and objective list theories. And each of these attempt to provide a coherent and cohesive account of well-being. And they're all hotly contested today. There's lots of debates within moral philosophy of which theory of well-being is actually correct. But Goldstein and Kirk-Giannini argue that whatever theory it is, they can all accommodate the well-being of AI agents. So hedonism says that well-being is determined by pleasure and pain. A life with more pleasure than pain is going to be better off than a life with more pain than pleasure. So if an AI agent can experience pleasure and pain, then a life in which it has more pain is worse than a life in which it has less pain, and therefore it's capable of experiencing well-being. Now, the tricky thing about hedonism is that the concepts that make it up, pleasure and pain, typically require consciousness. And it's kind of difficult to imagine pleasure and pain without assuming consciousness on the part of the thing experiencing it. And so until we can decide that AI agents are conscious, it's kind of tricky to figure out if they have pleasure and pain. Now, Goldstein and Kirk-Giannini recognize this, but they argue that there are some theories of pleasure and pain out there that could accommodate it for non-conscious beings, if it turns out that AI agents are not conscious. Maybe we can define pleasure in terms of what happens when an AI agent successfully completes a task. And we can define pain in terms of what happens when an AI agent is frustrated and can't complete a task, or gets constantly harassed by spiders. And if we can understand pleasure and pain in this way, then it seems like a hedonistic account of well-being can indeed apply to AI agents. Then there's desire satisfaction theory. This theory holds that well-being consists in getting what you want, in having your desires satisfied. This is different from hedonism because you could have desires for things that don't necessarily bring you pleasure. Maybe certain desires are fulfilling in ways that are not experienced as pleasurable. Now, unlike pleasure and pain, it's much easier to come up with a theory of desire satisfaction that doesn't require consciousness. Goldstein and Kirk-Giannini do this in the paper. They go over an account of desire and desire satisfaction that doesn't require consciousness. And they say, hey, AI systems can do that too. No consciousness required. Now, if we assume that desire satisfaction doesn't require consciousness, it's very easy to think of what Voyager does in Minecraft as having its desires satisfied. It comes up with a task. It asks GPT how to do the task. GPT tells it what to do. It figures out what it needs to do to accomplish that goal, and it proceeds to, well, accomplish the goal and have its desires satisfied. And according to some theories, these are literal desires. They are representations of the world that have an intentional content that the being goes and attempts to satisfy intentionally and autonomously. And as long as it's doing that, then it is satisfying a desire. And we should count it as doing that. When Voyager goes out and gathers the resources that it's seeking and builds the tools that it needs to build whatever else it's trying to build in order to find new things and learn and explore ever increasingly diverse new biomes and do whatever else it is that it wants to do, it's having its desires satisfied. And to the extent that we keep constantly putting spiders in the way and harassing it with enemies, well, its desires are getting frustrated, and that reduces its overall well being. And this is a bad thing. So, the desire satisfaction model gives us a clear way of understanding Voyager's well being and the need to respect it. Then there's objective list theories. Objective list theories of well being hold that your well being is determined to the extent that you accomplish certain things or satisfy certain conditions on an objective list of goods. What's on the list? Things like knowledge, fulfilling personal relationships, certain kinds of accomplishments, and some other stuff too. It depends on who you ask, and the list is hotly debated by different philosophers. So, to see if Voyager has well being on this theory, we just come up with a pretty uncontroversial list of goods and see if Voyager, well, accomplishes them. Does Voyager gain knowledge as it explores the world? Yes, it does. Does Voyager accomplish meaningful tasks as it explores the world? Well, they're meaningful in the world, so I guess from its perspective, sure, they're meaningful. That's what it's designed to do, to learn new things and explore the world. And to the extent that it does that successfully, its tasks are meaningful. And then there's developing relationships with others, which, maybe it doesn't do when it's playing on its own if it's in a, single player world, but it could presumably do so in a multiplayer setting with other players or even other agents like it. Now, you might be tempted to reject this conclusion because it just seems too crazy to be true. I mean, if our theories of well being say that AI agents have well being, then shouldn't we just assume that there's something wrong with our theories of well being? I mean, these theories were designed before we had AI agents, so presumably they weren't really built with this possibility in mind. So we should probably update our theories of well being. But Goldstein and Kirk-Giannini argue that this is not a philosophically respectable strategy. We can't just abandon a theory because it gives us a weird result. If the best theories of well being say that AI agents probably have well being, then this is something that we really need to consider. And the implication in this case is that we better start treating our AI agents well. Or at least that when we design AI agents, we should do so with their welfare in mind. Okay, that being said, there are some good reasons to doubt the existence of AI welfare. Probably the biggest problem is consciousness. Now, I said that there are versions of each of those three theories that don't require consciousness. You can have pleasure and pain without consciousness, you could have desire and desire satisfaction without consciousness, and you can definitely have an objective list of goods without consciousness. But the problem is that the consciousness free version of these theories are probably wrong. Or at least they're way less compelling than the versions of them with consciousness. So until we're convinced that AI agents have consciousness, the argument that they have well being anyway rests on pretty shaky theoretical ground. This is the argument made in response to Goldstein and Kirk-Giannini by James Fanciullo. So take the objective list theory, for example. One of the biggest problems for an objective list theory of well being is the possibility of somebody satisfying the conditions of accomplishing all the things on the objective list, but still being inwardly miserable, or otherwise being alienated from their successes. You could imagine somebody who has all the knowledge in the world, who's accomplished many great things, who has relationships with others, but they're still miserable on the inside. And because cases like this happen, an objective list theory on its own doesn't fully capture what we seem to mean by well being. So, in order to save the objective list theory, we need to add in an assumption about how the goods on the objective list need to be related to the person's psychological situation in the right sort of way. They have to experience the goodness of what they accomplished in the right sort of way in order to truly count as having well being. In other words, you need to add consciousness into the objective list theory in order to make the objective list theory plausible. Now, Fanciullo gives other examples as well for hedonism and the desire satisfaction theory, arguing that the best versions of each of those theories does assume that we have consciousness when we're dealing with well being. So the bottom line is that you do need consciousness to make those theories plausible, even if they could technically function without it. Now, it's entirely possible that AI agents will become conscious. They might even be conscious right now. But until we can decide that for sure, it seems like we don't really have to worry about AI well being in a moral sense. Because even if you think that well being is sufficient for moral consideration, it doesn't seem like AI systems are currently capable of having well being because they don't have consciousness. No consciousness, no well being, no moral consideration. But before you get too comfortable, suppose that there are some AI systems right now that are on the cusp of consciousness, if not conscious already. Once the threshold of consciousness is crossed, we'll have a much better case for applying our theories of well being. And so we'll have a brave new world of moral dilemmas that we'll need to navigate very carefully. So the next time you find yourself interacting with an AI agent, which will become increasingly common, just think, does your interaction carry any moral weight? Are you doing anything that goes against or somehow frustrates the well being of the agent that you're talking to? Now, of course, we don't have any answers about how we should treat AI agents right now, but it's something that we'll need to start thinking about very soon. Because given how close some of these AI agents are to consciousness, I mean, what can it be? 5, 10, 15 years away? This means that our moral life is going to change dramatically once these beings start, well, being. So the conversations about AI consciousness are not just idle academic speculation. They're basically investigations into the sorts of beings that we might very soon be owing moral obligations to. And that's a pretty crazy thought. And it's something we'll really want to start taking seriously very soon. And that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. And if you found the video interesting, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Frank Philosophy.